Well, first things first, this is not something I wrote. I just ran into it the other day and feel like it needs to be spread more, and people like listening more than reading, so I'm going to read it for everyone. I can tolerate I can tolerate anything except the out group. This is sort of ripping on good old Hitchens' quote about I find those most proud of their tolerance are the most intolerant, or something along those lines. This is kind of an essay elaborating on that thought. And again, I didn't write this. In Chesterton's The Secret of Father Brown, a beloved nobleman who murdered his good-for-nothing brother in a duel 30 years ago returns to his hometown racked by guilt. All the townspeople want to forgive him immediately, and they mock the titular priest for only being willing to give a measured forgiveness conditional on penance and self-reflection. They lecture the priest on the virtues of charity and compassion. Later, it comes out that the beloved nobleman did not, in fact, kill his good-for-nothing brother. The good-for-nothing brother killed the beloved nobleman and stole his identity. Now, the townspeople wanted to see him lynched and burned alive, and it is only the priest who, consistently, offers a measured forgiveness conditional on the penance and self-reflection. The priest tells them, "It seems to me that you only pardon the sins that you don't really think sinful. You only forgive criminals when they commit what you don't regard as crimes, but rather as conventions. You forgive a conventional duel just as you forgive a conventional divorce. You forgive because there isn't anything to be forgiven." That's the important thought we're going to elaborate for another hour on. He further notes that this is why the townspeople can self-righteously consider themselves more compassionate and forgiving than he is. Actual forgiveness, the kind the priest needs to cultivate to forgive evildoers, is really, really hard. The fake forgiveness the townspeople use to forgive people they like is really easy, so they get to boast not only of their forgiving nature, but of how much nicer they are than those mean old priests who find forgiveness difficult and want penance along with it. After some thought, I agree with Chesterton's point. There are a lot of people who say, "I will forgive you," when they mean, "no harm done." And a lot of people who say, "that was unforgivable," when they mean, "that was genuinely really bad." Whether or not forgiveness is right is a complicated topic I do not want to get in here. But since forgiveness is generally considered a virtue, and one that many want credit for having, I think it's fair to say that you only earn the right to call yourself forgiving if you forgive things that genuinely hurt you. To borrow Chesterton's example, if you think divorce is a-okay, then you don't get to forgive people in their divorces. You merely ignore them. Someone who thinks divorce is abhorrent can forgive divorce. You can forgive theft or murder or tax evasion or something you find abhorrent. I mean, from a utilitarian point of view, you're still doing the correct action of not giving people grief because they're a divorcee. You can have all the utility points you want. All I'm saying is that if you forgive something you don't care about, you don't earn any virtue points. Everyone loves their fucking virtue points. By way of illustration, a billionaire who gives $100 to charity gets as many utility points as an impoverished pensioner who donates the same amount, but the latter gets a lot more virtue points. So these people are going to denote utility and virtue points. Wonderful. Tolerance is also considered a virtue, but it suffers the same sort of diminished expectations that forgiveness does. The emperor summons before him some name I'm not going to say, Bodhidharma, and asks, "Master, I have been tolerant of innumerable gays. Master, I've been tolerant of innumerable gays, lesbians, bisexuals, asexuals, blacks, Hispanics, Asians, transgender people, and Jews. How many virtue points have I earned for my meritorious deeds?" None at all. Uh, Bodhid, Bodhidharma answers. The emperor, somewhat put out, demands to know why. Bodhidharma asks, "What do you think of gay people?" The emperor answers, "What do you think I am? Some kind of homophobic bigot? Of course I have nothing against gay people." And Bodhidharma answers, "Thus you gain no merit by tolerating them." Two. Not sure how they're dividing these, but whatever. On to two. If I have to define tolerance, it would be something like respect and kindness towards members of an out group. And today we have an almost unprecedented situation. We have a lot of people, like the emperor, boasting about being tolerant, but boasting about being able to tolerate everyone from every outgroup they can imagine, loving the outgroup, writing long paeans about how great the outgroup is, staying up at night fretting that somebody else might not like the outgroup enough. Oh man, this is a great spot to plug in good old C.S. Lewis's quote about the tyranny of the good people or whatever it is. Anyway, put that there. Fretting that somebody might not like the outgroup enough. This is really surprising. It's a total reversal of everything we know about human psychology up to this point. No one really did any genetic engineering. No one passed out weird glowing pills in the public schools. And yet suddenly, we get an entire group of people who conspicuously promote and defend their outgroups. The outer, the better. What is going on here? Let's start by asking what an outgroup is. There's a very boring sense in which, assuming the emperor is straight, gay is a part of his outgroup, i.e. a group that he is not a member of. But if the emperor has curly hair, are straight hair people part of his outgroup? If the emperor's name starts with the letter A, are people whose names start with the letter B part of his outgroup? Nah, I would differentiate between multiple different meanings of outgroup, where one is a group you are not a part of, and the other is something stronger. Okay, bud. I want to avoid a very easy trap, which is saying that outgroups are about as different as you are, or how hostile you are. I don't think that's quite right. Compare Nazis to the German Jews and to the Japanese. Always with the goddamn Nazis. The Nazis were very similar to the German Jews. They looked the same, spoke the same language, came from the same culture. The Nazis were totally different from the Japanese. Different race, different heritage, different language, vast cultural gap. But the Nazis and Japanese mostly got along pretty well. Heck, the Nazis were actually moderately positively disposed to the Chinese, even when they were technically at war. Meanwhile, the conflict between Nazis and the German Jews, some of whom didn't even realize that they were anything other than German until they checked their grandparents' birth certificate, is the stuff of history and nightmares. Any theory of outgroupishness that naively assumes the Nazis' natural outgroup is the Japanese or Chinese people will be totally inadequate. So up yours, identitarian, nutjob, intersectional assholes. And this isn't a weird exception. Freud spoke of the narcissism of small differences, saying that it is precisely communities with adjoining territories and related to each other in other ways as well, who are engaged in constant feuds and ridiculing each other. Well, our favorite insults are our own insecurities, and nobody expresses our own insecurities better than those most like us. So, and then it's effective against them because they share the insecurity, and thus some rivalry and tension builds. Anyway, where the hell was I? Anyway. And this isn't a weird exception. Freud, blah blah blah. Nazis and German Jews, Northern Irish Protestants, Northern Irish Catholics, Huts and Tutsis, Hutus and Tutsis. Those are the ones I was thinking of the other day. Never mind. South African whites and South African blacks, Israeli Jews and Israeli Arabs, anyone in the former Yugoslavia and anyone else in the former Yugoslavia. So what makes an outgroup? Proximity plus small differences. If you want to know who someone in a former Yugoslavia hates, don't look at Indonesia, or to the Zulus, or to Tibetans, or anyone else distant and exotic. Find the Yugoslavian ethnicity that lives closely intermingled with them, is most conspicuously similar to them, and chances are you'll find one who they have 800 years of seething hatred towards. What makes an unexpected in-group? The answer with Germans and Japanese is obvious: a strategic alliance. In fact, in the World Wars forged a lot of unexpected temporary pseudo-friendships. A recent article from War Nerd points out that the British, after spending centuries subjugating and despising the Irish and Sikhs, suddenly needed the Irish and Sikh soldiers for World War I and II respectively. Crush them beneath our boots quickly changed to fawning songs about how there never was a coward where the shamrock grows, and endless paeans to Sikh military prowess. Sure, scratch the paean. Why do you love this word so much? I hope I'm saying it right. Sure, scratch the paeans, whatever. Even a little bit, you find condescension as strong as ever. But 800 years worth of the British committing genocide against the Irish and considering them literally subhuman turned into smiles and songs about shamrocks once the Irish started looking like useful cannon fodder for a larger fight. And the Sikhs, dark-skinned people with turbans and beards who pretty much exemplify the European stereotype of scary foreigner, were lauded. They legit carry swords around, which is even pretty awesome, but I can see as intimidating. Were lauded by everyone from the news media all the way up to Winston Churchill. In other words, outgroups may be the people who look exactly like you, and scary foreigner types can become the in-group on a moment's notice when it seems convenient. 3. There are certain theories of dark matter where it barely interacts with the regular world at all, such that we could have a dark matter planet why are we talking about this now? Such that we could have a dark matter planet exactly coincident with Earth and never know. Maybe dark matter people are walking around all around us and through us. Maybe my house is in Times Square of a great dark matter city. Maybe a few meters away from me is a dark matter blogger writing on his dark matter computer about how weird it would be if there was a light matter person he could see right next to him. Would they call us light matter, though? This is sort of how I feel about conservatives. Oh, man. I need to find that clip the other day from good old Tim Pool showing a conservative and liberal internet, a thin strand between the two. I think I'm fortunate to be sitting on the strand, so everyone else looks a little bit insane for different reasons. I don't mean the sort of light matter conservatives who go around complaining about big government and occasionally voting for Romney. I see those guys all the time. What I mean is, well, take creationists. According to Gallup polls, about 46% of Americans are creationists. Not just in the sense of believing in God helped guide evolution. I mean they think evolution is a vile atheist lie and God created humans exactly as they exist right now. That is half the country. And I don't have a single one of those people in my social circle, and you might be surprised if you inquired around the fringes of the circle. I know I was. Anyway, it's not because I'm deliberately avoiding them. I'm pretty live and let live politically. I wouldn't ostracize somebody just for some weird beliefs. And yet, even though I probably know about 150 people, I'm pretty confident that not one of them is a creationist. Odds of this happening by chance are 1 in... What is this stuff trying to even tell me? Approximately the chance of picking a particular atom if you're randomly selecting among all the atoms on Earth. All right. About 40% of Americans want to ban gay marriage. I think if I really stretch it, maybe 10 of my top 150 friends might fall into this group. This is less astronomically unlikely. The odds are a mere 1 in 100 quintillion against. People like to talk about social bubbles, but that doesn't even begin to cover 100 quintillion. The only metaphor that seems really appropriate is the bizarre dark matter world. I live in a Republican congressional district in a state with a Republican governor. The conservatives are definitely out there. They drive on the same roads as I do, live in the same neighborhoods, but they might as well be made of dark matter. I never meet them. To be fair, I spent a lot of my time on my computer, browsing sites like Reddit. Recently, there was a thread on Reddit asking, Redditors against gay marriage, what is your best supporting argument? A Reddit user who didn't understand how anybody could be against gay marriage honestly wanted to know how other people who were against it justified their position. He figured he might as well ask one of the largest sites on the internet with an estimated user base in the tens of millions. It soon became clear that nobody there was actually against gay marriage. There were a bunch of people posts saying, I of course support gay marriage, but here are some reasons other people might be against it. A bunch of others saying, my argument against gay marriage is the government shouldn't be involved in marriage business at all. And several more saying, why would you even have to ask this question? There's no possible good argument and you're wasting your time. Well, halfway through the thread, somebody started saying homosexuality was unnatural, and I thought they were going to be the first ones to actually answer the question. But at the end they added, but it's not my place to decide what is or isn't natural. I'm still pro-gay marriage. In a thread with 10,401 comments, a thread specifically asking for people against gay marriage, I was eventually able to find 2 people who came out as and opposed it, way near the bottom. Their post started with, I know I'm going to be downvoted to hell for this. But I'm not only on Reddit, I also hang out on LW. What is LW? Dear commenters, tell me how retarded I am for not knowing what LW is. I'm pretty sure it's not Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. So I'm retarded. Anyway, so this person hangs out on LW. On last year's survey, I found that American LWers who identify with one of the 2 major political parties, 80% are Democrat and 20% Republican, which actually sounds pretty balanced compared to some of these other examples. But it doesn't last. Pretty much all of those Republicans are libertarians who consider the GOP the lesser of 2 evils. When allowed to choose libertarian as an alternative, only 4% of visitors continue to identify as conservative. But that's still some, right? When I broke the numbers down further, 3% points of those are neo-reactionaries, a bizarre sect that wants to be ruled by a king. Only 1% of LWers were normal, everyday, gods and guns, but not George III conservatives, of the type that seem to make up about half of the United States. It gets worse. My formative years were spent at a university, which, if it was similar to other elite universities, had a faculty and a student body that skewed about 90-10 liberal to conservative. And we can bet that, like LW, even those few token conservatives are Mitt Romney types rather than gods and guns types. I get my news from Vox, an official liberal-approved site. Even when I go out to eat, it turns out my favorite restaurant is California Pizza Kitchen, is the most liberal restaurant in the United States. This person lives in such a bubble, it's insane. I inhabit the same geographical area as scores and scores of conservatives, but without meaning to. I've created an outrageously strong bubble. A 10 to 45 bubble. Conservatives are all around me, yet I am about as likely to have a serious encounter with one of them as I am with a Tibetan Lama. Unless, actually, one time a Tibetan Lama came to my college and gave a really nice presentation. But if a conservative tried to do that, people would protest and it would be canceled. Great job there to the illiberal anti-speech left that he is in a bubble of. Or she. I didn't check the name on this author. And we're up to 4. One day I realized that entirely by accident I was fulfilling all of the Jewish stereotypes. Wonderful. I'm nerdy, overeducated, good with words, good with money, weird sense of humor. Don't get outside much. If I like deli sandwiches, that's a Jewish thing. And I'm a psychiatrist. Which is about the most stereotypically Jewish profession, short of maybe stand-up comedian or rabbi. Well, you know what? You could probably do stand-up competently. Don't consider that. If you get fired for this transgressive essay getting out, consider the comedy. I'm not very religious. Of course you're not. That's a Jewish stereotype. Oh, there you go. I don't go to synagogue, but that's the typically Jewish, stereotypically Jewish too. Uh, I bring this up because it would be a mistake to think, well, a Jewish person is by definition someone who is born of a Jewish mother. Or I guess it sort of also means someone who follows a Mosaic law and goes to synagogue. But I don't care about Scott's mother. I don't know, and I know he doesn't go to synagogue. So I can't gain any useful information from knowing Scott is Jewish. So I guess this person's name is Scott at least. What? The defining factors of Judaism, Torah reading, synagogue following, mother having, are the tip of a giant iceberg. Jews sometimes identify as a tribe, and even if you don't attend synagogue, you're still a member of that tribe, and people can still, in a statistical way, infer things about you by knowing your Jewish identity, like how likely they are to be psychiatrists. The last section raises a question. If people rarely select their friends and associates and customers explicitly for politics, how do we end up with such intense political segregation? Well, in the same way, going to synagogue is merely the tip of the iceberg of the Jewish tribe with many distinguishing characteristics. So, voting Republican or identifying as conservative or believing in creationism is the tip of the iceberg of a conservative tribe with many distinguishing characteristics. A disproportionate number of my friends are Jewish because I meet them at psychiatry conferences or something. We self-segregate not based on explicit religion, but on implicit tribal characteristics. So in the same way, political tribes self-segregate to an impressive extent. Whatever this is, 1/10 over 10 to the 45. So that's 1 divided by 10 to the 45 zeros afterwards. Okay. I will never tire of hammering in based on their implicit tribal characteristics. The people who are actually into this sort of thing sketch out, but people who are actually into this sort of thing sketch out a bunch of speculative tribes and sub-tribes. But to make it easier, let me stick with 2.5. Okay. The Red Tribe, I'm going to write something like this and make it 4 probably. The Red Tribe is more classically defined by conservative political beliefs. You should have made that the Left Tribe because, you know. Anyway, typically typified by conservative political beliefs, strong evangelical religious beliefs, creationism, opposing gay marriage, owning guns, eating steak is a conservative thing, drinking Coca-Cola, driving SUVs, watching lots of TV, yeah, because, Colbert doesn't count, enjoying American football, getting conspicuously upset about terrorists and commies, marrying early, divorcing early, shouting USA is #1, and listening to country music. Man, that's a hilarious list. Man. Blue Tribe is more classically typified by liberal political beliefs. You don't know what a liberal means, Mr. Psychiatrist. There's nothing like liberals like half that shit up there. What's wrong with eating steak? Oh my god. Yeah, more typified by liberal political beliefs, vague agnosticism, supporting gay rights, thinking guns are barbaric, eating arugula, drinking fancy bottled water, driving, reading lots of books, being highly educated, mocking American football, feeling vaguely like they should like soccer but never really being able to get into it, getting conspicuously upset about sexists and bigots. That's so funny. Marrying later, constantly pointing out how much more civilized European countries are than American, and listening to everything except country. There is a partly formed attempt to spin off a gray tribe, typically typified by libertarian political beliefs. That's probably closer to what liberal actually is. Dawkins-style atheism. Vague annoyance at the question of gay rights even comes up. Eating paleo. Drinking Soylent. My brother tries to get me onto that shit. I think I have 2 bags in my I'm like fucking covered. Calling in rides on Uber isn't available in my region. Reading lots of blogs calling American football sports ball. I think my brother literally does that too. Getting conspicuously upset about the war on drugs and the NSA and listening to Filk. What is Filk? But for our, but for our current purposes, this is a distraction, and they can safely be considered part of Blue Tribe most of the time. Holy shit. Man, I just skimmed this earlier, and I thought there was like a lot of points in it that were on point. This is way funnier than I thought it was going to be. I think these tribes will come out to be even stronger categories than politics. Harvard might skew 80-20 in terms of Democrat versus Republican, 90-10 in terms of liberal versus conservative, but maybe 99-1 in terms of blues versus reds. Gotta go to some different colleges. I don't know. It's the many, many differences between these tribes that explain the strength of the filter bubble, which I have mentioned segregates people at a strength of fuck off. Even in something as seemingly politically uncharged as going to California Pizza Kitchen or Sushi House for dinner, I'm restricting myself to the set of people who like cute artisanal pizzas or sophisticated foreign foods, which are classically Blue Tribe characteristics. Are these tribes based on geography? Are they based on race, ethnic origin, religion, IQ, what TV channels you watched as a kid? I don't know. I think I got an answer, but more on that in a future video. Some of it is certainly genetic. Estimates of genetic contribution to political association range from 0.4 to 0.6. Heritability of one's attitude towards gay rights range from 0.3 to 0.5, which hilariously is a little more heritable than homosexuality itself. That is funny. For an interesting attempt to break down into more for half hour, I'm getting where's my water? Fuck. Leaving it all in. One cut. That's how we work around here. So, for an interesting attempt to break these down into more rigorous concepts like traditionalism, authoritarianism, and in-group favoritism, and find the genetic loading for each, see here. Nah. For an attempt to trace the specific genes involved, which mostly turn out to be NMDA receptors, see here. Nah, but link for this thing in the description, and you can follow the links on your own if you really care that much. But I don't think it's just genetics. Congratulations, you're sane. There's something else going on, too. The word class seems like the closest analog, but only if you use it in the sophisticated Paul Fussell's Guide Through American Status Systems way, instead of the boring, another word for how much money you make way. Like the commies. For now we can just accept them as a brute fact. Multiple coexisting societies that might as well be made of dark matter for all the interactions that they have with one another, and move on. The worst reactions I've ever gotten to a blog post was when I wrote about the death of Osama bin Laden. I've been doing this for a bit, eh? I've written all sorts of stuff about race and gender and politics and whatever, but that was the worst. When are we getting back to outgroups and tolerance? Anyway, I didn't come out and say I was happy he was dead, but some people interpreted it that way. There followed a bunch of comments and emails and Facebook messages about how could I possibly be happy about the death of another human being, even if he was a bad person. Self-righteous indignation at its best. Everyone, even Osama, is a human being, and we should never rejoice in the death of a fellow man. One commenter came out and said, "I'm surprised at your reaction. As far as people I casually stalk on the internet, i.e. LJ and Facebook, you're the first person out of the intelligent, reasoned, and thoughtful group to be uncomplicitly happy about this development and not to be, say, disgusted at the reactions of the other 90% or so. It's weird that you think everyone who's smart agrees and the other 90% are wrong. This commenter was right. Okay, sure. Of the intelligent, reasoned, and thoughtful people I knew, the overwhelming emotion was conspicuous disgust that other people could be happy about his death. I hastily backtracked and said I wasn't happy per se, just surprised and relieved that all of this was finally behind us. And I genuinely believed that day that I had found some unexpected good people, that everyone I knew was so humane and compassionate that they were unable to rejoice even in the death of somebody who hated them and everything they stood for. But it's not true. They sort of stand for the same shit. Neither of them like Western liberal democracy. They want to see it torn down. Anyway. Then a few years later, Margaret Thatcher died. And on my Facebook wall, made of these same intelligent, reasoned, and thoughtful people, the most common response was to quote some portion of the song Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead. Another popular response, sexists, sexists. Another popular response was to link the videos of British people spontaneously throwing parties on the street with comments like, I wish I was there so I could join in and party about this dead person. From this exact same group of people, not a single expression of disgust or, come on guys, we're all human beings around here. I gently pointed this out at the time, and mostly got a bunch of, yes, so what, combined with links to an article claiming that the demand for respectful silence in the wake of a public figure's death is not just misguided, but dangerous. When other people do it. And that was when something clicked for me. Congrats. You can talk all you want about Islamophobia. Because everything's Islamophobia. You can straight up be a Muslim running a Muslim charity and be an Islamophobe. Accused by non-Muslims who don't know anything about the religion. It's fucking incredible. Anyway. You can talk all you want about Islamophobia, but my friend's intelligent, reasoned, and thoughtful people, her name for the Blue Tribe, can't get together enough energy to really hate Osama, let alone Muslims in general. We understand that what he did was bad, but it didn't anger us personally. When he died, we were able to very rationally apply our better nature and our far-mode beliefs about how it's never right to be happy about anyone else's death, especially an ally of convenience like you were talking about earlier, where you both just want to see the end of the civilization in question. On the other hand, that same group absolutely loathed Thatcher. Most of us, though not all, can agree if the question is posed explicitly that Osama was a worse person than Thatcher. But in terms of actual gut feeling, Osama provokes a snap judgment of a flawed human being. Thatcher, a snap judgment of scum. Dirty scum. A hive of scum and villainy. I started this essay by pointing out that despite what geographical and cultural distance would suggest, the Nazis' outgroup was not the vastly different Japanese, but the almost identical German Jews. And my hypothesis, stated plainly, is that if you're part of the Blue Tribe, then your outgroup isn't Al-Qaeda, or Muslims, or blacks, or gays, or trans people, or Jews, or atheists. It's the Red Tribe. Notice that he takes credit for all those groups into the blue group. Pretty sure that's what's going on there. If you're part of the blue group, you outgroup, yeah, because those aren't your outgroup because they're your in-group against the Red Tribe, who you purport as being against these groups, even though they have Red Tribe conservative Muslims and more conservative. Oh fuck. Dichotomies. Gotta at least give me a four-way. Come on. All right, we're getting pretty long in the tooth here, but we're probably only about halfway through. You'll be able to tell. I don't know. Part 6 here. However, these are fucking numbered. But racism and sexism and cis-sexism and anti-Semitism are these giant all-encompassing social factors that verge upon being human universals. Surely you're not arguing that mere political differences could ever come close to them. One of the ways we know that racism is a giant all-encompassing social factor is the implicit association test. Psychologists ask subjects to quickly identify whether words or photos are members of certain gerrymandered categories, like either a white person's face or a positive emotion, or either a black person's face or a negative emotion. Implicit associations tests are bullshit, by the way. I'm not sure. We know that racism is a giant... Fuck, you gotta catch up on your literature, alleged psychologist. Then they compare to a different set of gerrymandered categories, like the black person's face, positive, white person. Subjects have more trouble, as measured in latency time, connecting white people to negative emotions than they do white people to positive things, and they probably have a subconscious positive associations with white people. You can try it yourself here. This is pretty much saying that you prefer people who look like you, and you're more like you're more evolutionarily like keyed to prefer people who look like you. I wonder why. I'm no scientist, I'm no psychologist here, but maybe we could get a detective on the case. Of course, what the test famously found was that even white people who claimed to have no racist attitudes at all usually had positive associations with white people and negative associations with black people on the test. There are very many claims and counterclaims of the precise meaning of this, but it ended up being a big part of the evidence in favor of the current consensus that all white people are at least a little racist. Did you do this study on black people or like anyone else, maybe? Anyway, 3 months ago, somebody finally had the bright idea of doing the implicit bias test with political parties. Not with anybody but white people, though. Just test the white people. Look for their racism. And they found that people's unconscious partisan biases were half again as strong as their unconscious racial biases. For example, if you're a white Democrat, your unconscious bias against blacks, as measured by something called a D-score, is 0.16. But your unconscious bias against Republicans will be a 0.23. The Cohen's D for racial bias was 0.61. By the book, a moderate effect size. So for party, it was 9.95. A large effect size. Okay, fine. But we know race has real-world consequences. Like, there have been several studies where people sent a bunch of identical resumes, except sometimes with a black person's photo and other times with a white person's photo. Don't send your photos and resumes unless it's like for an acting spot, in which case it's relevant. And it was noticed that employers were more likely to invite the fictional white candidate for interviews. So just some stupid implicit associations test results can't compare to that, right? Maybe there's something else going on there. Maybe. I'm not. Anyway. Confounding variables. You never know. Yengar and Westwood, yeah, okay, that's what we're going with, also decided to do the resume test for parties. They asked subjects to decide which of several candidates should get a scholarship. Subjects were told that this is a genuine decision for the university the researchers were affiliated with. Some resumes had photos of black people, others of white people, and some students listed their experience in Young Democrats of America, others in Young Republicans of America. Once again, discrimination on the basis of party was much stronger than discrimination on the basis of race. The size of the race effect for white people was only 66 to 44, and in the reverse of the expected direction. The size of the party effect was about 80 to 20 for Democrats and 69 to 31 for Republicans. If you want to see their third experiment, which applied yet another classical methodology used to detect racism, and there's something about you're getting like inspectors of inspectors inspecting the inspectors tools to inspect with, or something. Is that what we're getting up to here? If you really want to see their another classic methodology used to detect racism and once again found partyism to be much stronger, you can read the paper. It's almost like people in the modern world are sensible enough to judge people on their individual merits, which are much more aligned with their personal beliefs than with what the fuck they look like. Almost. It's almost like that. I might be wrong, but it's almost what it sounds like. Maybe there isn't as much racism as you think there is. I and W, as names from earlier, did an unusually thorough job, but this sort of thing isn't new or groundbreaking, and none of it ever gets recited because most papers never do, but these guys did. People have been studying belief congruence theory, the idea that differences in beliefs are more important than demographic factors in forming in-groups and out-groups for decades. As early as 1967, Smith et al. Were doing surveys all over the country and finding that people are more likely to accept friendships across racial lines than across beliefs. In the 40 years since then, the observation has been replicated scores of times. Insco, Moe, and Narcoste, 2006 review of belief, consequence, and racial discrimination, concludes that the literature was judged supportive of a weak version of belief congruence theory, which states that in those contexts in which social pressure is non-existent or ineffective, belief is more important than race as a determinant of racial or ethnic determination. Evidence for a strong version of belief consequence theory, which states that in those contexts in which social pressure is non-existent or ineffective, belief is the only determinant of racial or ethnic discrimination, and was judged much more problematic. So hopefully you got something out of that, because I just kind of said it. No idea what the fuck it was. Anyway. One of the best known examples of racism is the guess who's coming to dinner scenario, where parents are scandalized about their child marrying someone of a different race. Pew has done some good work on this and found that only 23% of conservatives and 1% of liberals admit that they would be upset in this situation. But Pew also asked how parents would feel about their child marrying someone of a different political party. Now 30% of conservatives and 23% of liberals would get upset. Average them out and you go from 12% upsetness rate for race to 27% upsetness for rate for party. More than double. Yeah, people do lie to pollsters, but a big picture is starting to come together here. Good detective work. Well done. Harvard, by the way, is a toss-up. There are more black students, 11.3, than conservative students, 10. There are more conservative faculty than black faculty. I wonder if that's sort of related too. I wonder how many of those black students actually graduate with the same sort of honors they would have otherwise had they gone to anywhere but Harvard. I also wonder how many of them are kind of pushed into like studying black theory instead of engineering. But that's something else entirely. A waste of time and minds. Since people will delight in misinterpreting me here, let me overemphasize what I am not saying. I am not saying people of either party have it worse than black people, or that partyism is more of a problem than racism, or any other number of stupid things along those lines, which I am sure will nonetheless be accused of believing. You just made that argument, but okay. I have conservative gay people saying it's harder to come out conservative than it is to come out gay, but okay, whatever. Racism is worse than partyism because the two parties are at least kind of balanced in numbers and in resources. That's why, okay. Whereas the brunt of an entire country's racism falls on a few underprivileged people. Is it worse for two halves of the country to be willing to murder one another, or for 90% to just sort of not like the other 10%? I think the first one's worse personally, but what do I know? I'm just a guy on a mic reading some psychologist stuff, stuttering my way through this shit. Anyway, I am saying that the underlying attitudes that produce partyism are stronger than the underlying attitudes that produce racism, with no necessary implications on their social effects. But what if we want to look at people's psychology and motivations? Partyism and the particular variant of tribalism that it represents are going to be fertile ground. Part 7. Should have thoroughly read this before starting, but we're already in it. Every election cycle, like clockwork, conservatives accuse liberals of not being sufficiently pro-American. And every election cycle, like clockwork, liberals give extremely unconvincing denials of this. Like I said, they don't mind Osama because Osama wants to. They're both not pro-America. See, like that makes them progressives. They're Marxists. They're illiberals. That's why they oppose other parties. They're fucking nuts. Anyway, it's not that we're like against America per se. It's just that, well, did you know Europe has much better healthcare than we do? Invented by America. Much lower crime rates. I mean, come on, how did they get so awesome? And we're just sitting here. Can't even get gay marriage thing sorted out. Seriously, what's wrong with this country that can't? Sorry, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, America. They're okay. Cesar Chavez was really neat. So are some of the other people outside the mainstream who became famous precisely by criticizing majority society. That's sort of like America being great, and that I think the parts of it that point out how bad the rest of it is are often make excellent points. Vote for me. Sorry, I make fun of you because I love you. I don't. You are not liberals. Like, you only favor dissent when it is your dissent. You don't give a shit about other people's dissent. And anyone dissenting from you will be excommunicated from your little church. Anyway, this is maybe not fair to the writer, but just as a stereotype of the progressives who are the people who are hacking up those numbers of intolerance. Anyway, there was a big brouhaha a couple of years ago when, as it first became apparent Obama had a good shot at the presidency. Michelle Obama said that, for the first time in my adult life, I am proud of my country. Republicans pounced on the comment, asking why she hadn't felt proud before, and she backtracked, saying of course she was proud all the time, and she loves America with the burning fury of a million suns, and she was just saying that the Obama campaign was particularly inspiring. As unconvincing denials go, this one was pretty far up there. But no one really held it against her. Probably most of Obama's voters felt vaguely the same way. I was an Obama voter, and I have proud memories of spending my 4th of Julys as a kid debunking people's heartfelt emotions of patriotism. Aaron Sorkin. What makes America the greatest country in the world? It's not the greatest country in the world. We're 7th in literacy, 27th in math, 22nd in science, 49th in life expectancy, 178th in infant mortality, 3rd in median household income, 4th in labor force, 4 in exports. So when you ask me what makes America greatest country in the world, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. It's a pretty decent rant. I'll give him that. But whatever. Anyway, another good retort is, we're number one. Sure, number one in incarceration rates, drone strikes, and making new parents go back to work. All of this is true, of course, but it's weird that it's such a classic interest of members of the blue tribe, and members of the red tribe never seem to bring it up. We're number one. Sure, number one in levels of sexual degeneracy. Well, I guess probably number 2 after all the Netherlands, but they're small and they shouldn't count. Not sure what conservatives know about the sexual degeneracy of the Netherlands, but I would have gone with Thailand probably. But anyway, I'm not as That's the word I'm looking for. Exactly. Cultured, as the writer here. My hunch, both the red tribe and blue tribe, for whatever reason, identify America with the red tribe. That's because the blue tribe is against the fucking communists, the Marxists of a different stripe than economic. You just gotta fucking fuck. Ask people for typically American things, and you end up with a very red list of characteristics. Red is the wrong color here. Guns, religion, barbecues, American football, NASCAR, cowboys, SUVs, unrestrained capitalism is actually currently more of a Dutch thing that everyone loves. Everyone wants to be Denmark. Not the Dutch aren't Denmark. Fuck. Whatever. Ignorant Canadian here. That means the red tribe feels intensely patriotic about their country, and the blue tribe feels like they're living in fortified enclaves deep in hostile territory. Here's a popular piece published on a major media site called America, a big fat stupid nation. Another, America, a bunch of spoiled whiny brats. Americans are ignorant, scientifically illiterate, religious fanatics, whose patriotism is actually just narcissism. You'll be shocked at how ignorant Americans are, and we should blame the childish, ignorant American people. Needless to say, every single one of these articles was written by an American and read almost entirely by Americans. Those Americans very likely enjoyed the article very much and did not feel in the least bit insulted. And look at the sources. Huffington Post, Salon, Slate. Might those have anything in common? On both sides, America can be either normal, demonym, or code word for member of the red tribe. Oh, part 8. The other day I logged into OkCupid. Of course you did. And found someone who looked cool. I was reading over her profile and found the following sentence. Don't message me if you're a sexist white guy. Fortunately, this author's Jewish, so he doesn't have to worry about it. My first thought was, wait, so a sexist black person would be okay? Why? Because the bigotry of low expectations and the progressive stack. Come on. Why? Come on. The girl in question was as white as snow. Around the time the Ferguson riots were first starting, there were a host of articles with titles like, Why White People Don't Seem to Understand Ferguson, Why It's So Hard for Whites to Understand Ferguson, and White Folk Listen Up and Let Me Tell You What Ferguson is All About. The last of which says, Social media is full of people on both sides making presumptions and believing what they want to believe. But it's white folks that don't understand what this is all about. Let me put it as simply as I can for you. No matter how wrong you think Trayvon Martin or Michael Brown were, I think we can all agree that they didn't deserve to die over it. I want you white folk to understand that this is where the anger is coming from. You focused on the looting, which occasionally leads to dead people when it escalates into more serious violence and arson and whatnot. But whatever. Especially annoying because I agree. People shouldn't die when they're in altercation with the police, including the police, who incidentally die more often in the country, and that never gets any mention and talked about. Black police, too. You know what? I would be willing to bet some money on it being that black police are disproportionately killed among police officers. Because I just would expect they disproportionately police the black communities in which the police officers are disproportionately killed. Just a hunch. Anyway, back to this. And on a hunch, I checked the author's photos, and every single one of these articles was written by a white person. White people are ruining America. White people are still a disgrace. White guys, we suck and we're sorry. White. Bye-bye, whiny white dudes. White. Dear entitled straight white guys, I'm evicting you from my life. White dudes need to stop white-splaining white. Reasons why Americans suck. Number 1, white people. White. I wonder why why white supremacist groups are on the uptick and white identitarianism is suddenly a thing at all. Period. Probably nothing to do with any of these articles or the the cultural commentary around them, where they're just immune from criticism, lest you be deemed a racist, because only white people and ethnic pejoratives equating to submissive to white people care about combating this shit. Anyway, I can't get more than a paragraph without fucking interjecting. I'm never gonna get through this damn thing. We've all seen articles and comments in articles like this. Some unsavory people try to use them to prove that white people are the real victims, or the media is biased against white people or something. Other people, who are very nice and optimistic, use them to show that some white people have developed some self-awareness, and are willing to engage in self-criticism. But I think the situation with white is much the same as the situation with American. It can either mean what it says, or can be code word for the red tribe. Except on the stuff white people like, which is obviously serves for code for the blue tribe. I don't know, guys. I didn't do it. I realize that's making a strong claim, but it would hardly be without precedent. When people say things like, gamers are misogynists, do they mean the 52% of gamers who are women? Those don't count. Okay, good argument. I'll agree with you here. Or do they mean every one of the 59% of Americans' everyday walk of life who are known to play video or computer games occasionally? No? Gamer is a coded reference to the gray tribe. The half-branched off collection of libertarianish, tech-savvy nerds, and everyone knows it. As well expect that when people talk about fedoras, they mean Indiana Jones. And when they talk about urban youth, they mean freshmen to NYU. Everyone knows exactly who we mean when we say urban youth. And being young people who live in a city has only the most tenuous of relations to the actual concept. And I'm saying words like American and white work the same way. Bill Clinton was the first black president. But if Herman Cain had won in 2012, he'd have been the 43rd white president. And when an angry white person talks at great length about how much he hates white dudes, he's not being humble and self-critical. Right, because they're Marxist ideologues who've turned demographics into the class conflict that they want to have a violent revolution over, to usurp what they deem as the oppressors, which are white people. Just not the white people who, are Marxists somehow. A lot of them say that they're Jewish. Sorry, author. The backdraft is going to catch you. Unless we can figure out how the fuck to not repeat history, because it sure looks to me like we're lining up the bowling pins for it. Anyway, anti-Semitism's super popular in both the red and the blue tribes. But I'm not sure if you're aware of that. Anyway, imagine hearing that a liberal talk show host and comedian was so enraged by the actions of ISIS that he'd recorded and posted a video in which he shouts at them for 10 minutes, cursing the fanatical terrorists and calling them utter savages with savage values. If I heard that, I'd be kind of surprised. It doesn't fit my model of what a liberal talk show host, of what liberal talk show hosts do, because you don't know what liberal means, but it's okay. But the story I'm actually referring to is a liberal talk show host comedian Russell Brand making that same rant against Fox and Snooze for supporting the war against the Islamic State. Exactly, because they're both against America, right? Adding at the end that Fox is worse than ISIS. And just to be clear, I'm not the conservative seeing commies behind every corner that you claimed at the start. I was the liberal who knows what the word means, and I haven't been anything right of center ever. But whatever, I digress. This model, that fits my model perfectly. You wouldn't celebrate Osama's death, only Thatcher's. And you wouldn't call ISIS savages, only Fox News. Fox is the outgroup. ISIS is just some random people off in the desert. No, ISIS is the Japanese. They're the temporary allies. Because they agree on demographic segregation. And America should go down. And that's all you need to be part of that team, in-group, more than just randoms. I would go further. I hope you do. Not only does Brand not feel much like hating ISIS, he has a strong incentive not to. That incentive is that the Red Tribe is known to hate ISIS loudly and conspicuously. Hating ISIS would signal Red Tribe membership. Would be the equivalent of going into Crips territory with a big blood gang sign tattooed on your shoulder. I guess. Though this might be unfair, what would Russell Brand answer if we asked him to justify his decision to be angrier at Fox than ISIS? He might say something like, obviously Fox News is not literally worse than ISIS, but here I am talking to my audience who are mostly white British people and Americans. These people already know that ISIS is bad. They don't need to be told that any further. In fact, at this point, being angry at how bad ISIS is less likely to genuinely change someone's mind about ISIS and more likely to promote Islamophobia. The sort of people in my audience are at zero risk of becoming ISIS supporters, sure, but at a very real risk of Islamophobia. It doesn't speak well of your audience. So ranting against ISIS would be counterproductive and dangerous. On the other hand, my audience of white British and people and Americans is very likely to contain many Fox News viewers and supporters. And Fox News, while not quite as evil as ISIS, is still pretty bad. And here's somewhere I have a genuine chance to reach people at risk. At risk of Fox News. And change minds. Therefore, I think my decision to rant against Fox News and maybe hyperbolically say that they were worse than ISIS is justified under the circumstances. I have a lot of sympathy to hypothetical Brand especially to the part about Islamophobia. It does seem really possible to denounce ISIS atrocities to a population that already hates them in order to weak man a couple of already marginalized Muslims. Marginalized. We need to fight terrorism and atrocities, so therefore it's okay to shout at a poor girl 10,000 miles away from home for wearing a headscarf in public. Christians are being executed for their faith in Sudan. Therefore, let's picket the people trying to build the mosque next door. I thought you said they were 10,000 miles from home. Why are they building a mosque next door? Maybe they should integrate a little better. I don't know. A lot of Muslims really don't think that things are religiously mandated. It's a theocratic, political costume. Anyway, I don't get it. But my sympathy with Brand ends when he acts like his audience is likely to be fans of Fox News. Good. In a world where a negligible number of Redditors oppose gay marriage and 1% of the less wrongers identify conservative, and I know 0 of 150 creationists, how many of the people who visit the YouTube channel of a well-known liberal activist with a Che-inspired banner, a channel whose episodes names are things like War, What Is It Good For, and Sarah Silverman Talks Feminism, how many of them do you think are big Fox News fans? Che. Communism. I'm telling you. In a way, Russell Brand would have been braver to taking a stand against ISIS than against Fox. If he attacked ISIS, his viewers would be just a little confused and uncomfortable. Whereas every moment he's attacking Fox, his viewers are like, haha, yeah, got him. Show those ignorant bigots in the outgroup who's boss. Brand acts as if there are just these countries called Britain and America who are receiving his material. Wrong. There are 2 parallel universes, and he's only broadcasting to one of them. The result is exactly what we predicted would happen in the case of Islam. Bombard people with images of a far-off land they already hate and tell them to hate it more, and the result is ramping up of the intolerance on the couple of dazed and marginalized representatives of that culture who have ended up stuck in your half of the divide. Sure enough, if industry or culture or community gets blue enough, Red Tribe members start getting harassed, fired from their jobs, Brendan Eek from being the obvious example, or otherwise shown the door. And eventually they go to Blue Tribe members, like the Google dude recently. James Damore. Insufficiently pure. You don't deny enough science. Think of Brendan Ike as a member of a tiny religious minority surrounded by people who hate that minority. Suddenly firing him doesn't seem very noble. If you mix together Podunk, Texas, and Mosul, Iraq, you can prove that Muslims are scary and very powerful people who are executing Christians all the time. So we have a great excuse for kicking one remaining Muslim family, random people who never hurt anyone, out of town. And if you mix together the open source tech industry and the parallel universe where you can't wear a free BSD t-shirt without risking someone trying to exorcise you, you can prove that Christians are scary and very powerful people who are persecuting everyone else all the time. And you can have a great excuse for kicking out one of the people willing to affiliate with a red tribe who never hurt anyone out of town. When a friend of mine heard that Ike got fired, she didn't see anything wrong with it. "I can tolerate anything except intolerance," she said. Intolerance is starting to look a lot like another one of those words like white and American. If I can tolerate anything, I can tolerate anything except the outgroup. Doesn't sound quite so noble now, does it? Part 10. Man. Oh, beauty. This essay is bad and I should feel bad. Yes. But you're on the right track, friend. I should feel bad because I made exactly the mistake I'm trying to warn everyone else about, and it wasn't until I was almost done that I noticed. How virtuous, how noble I must be, never stooping to engage in petty tribal conflict like that silly red tribe, but always nobly criticizing my own tribe and striving to make it better. Yeah, once I've written about 10,000 word essay savagely attacking the blue tribe, either I'm a very special person or they're my outgroup, and I'm not that special. Just as you can pull a fast one and look humbly self-critical if you make your audience assume that there's just one American culture, so maybe you can trick people by assuming there's only one blue tribe. I'm pretty sure I'm not red, but I did talk about the gray tribe above, and I show all the risk factors for being one of them. That means that although my critique of blue tribe may be right or wrong, in terms of motivation, it comes from the same place as a red tribe member talking about how much they hate Al-Qaeda, or a blue tribe member talking about how much they hate ignorant bigots. And when I boast of being able to tolerate Christians and Southerners, whom the blue tribe is mean to, I am not being tolerant at all, just noticing people so far away from me that they wouldn't make a good outgroup anyway. I had fun writing this article. People do not have fun writing articles savagely criticizing their in-group. People can criticize their in-group. People can criticize their in-group. It's not humanely impossible. But it takes nerves of steel, it makes your blood boil, and you should sweat blood. It shouldn't be fun. What if you enjoy sweating till you bleed? You can bet some white guy on Gawker, who week after week turns out why white people are so terrible, and here's what dumb white people don't understand, is having fun and not sweating any blood at all. He's not criticizing his in-group. He's never even considered criticizing his in-group. I can't blame him. Criticizing the in-group is a really difficult project I've barely begun to build the mental skills necessary to even consider. I noticed. I can think of criticisms of my own tribe, ignorant criticisms, true ones, but the thought of writing them makes my blood boil. I imagine might I feel the same like some liberal U.S. Muslim leader when he goes on the O'Reilly show and O'Reilly ambushes him and demands to know why he and other Muslims haven't condemned beheading by ISIS more. Demands that he criticize them right there on live TV. You see the wheels on the Muslim leader's head turning, thinking like, okay, obviously beheadings are terrible and I hate them just as much as anybody. No, I don't. You don't care even the slightest bit about the victims of the beheadings. You're just looking, see, this is him attacking the red group. You're just looking for ways to score points against me so you can embarrass all Muslims. Strawmans. And I would rather personally behead every single person in the world than give a smug bigot like you a single microgram more stupid self-satisfaction than you've already got. I would rather behead people, but I hate beheading as much as the next person. You don't hate beheading people. I think you're still part of the blue group, bud. but you're on your way out. Find that door. This is how I feel when asked to criticize my own tribe, even for correct reasons. If you think you're criticizing your own tribe and your blood is not at that temperature, consider the possibility that you aren't. But if I want self-criticism virtue points, criticizing the gray tribe is the only honest way to get them. And if I want tolerance points, my only personal cross to bear right now is tolerating the blue tribe. I need to remind myself that when they are bad people, they are merely Osama level bad people instead of Thatcher level bad people. When they are good people, they are powerful and necessary crusaders against the evils of the world. The red people. The worst thing that can happen to this post is to have it used as convenient feces to fling at the blue tribe whenever feces are necessary. Which, given what has happened in the last couple of posts along these lines, the obvious biases of my own subconscious, I already expect it will be. But the best thing that could happen out of this post is it makes a lot of people, especially myself, figure out how to be more tolerant. Not in the, of course I'm tolerant, why shouldn't I be, sense of the Emperor in part 1, but in the sense of, being tolerant makes me see red, makes me sweat blood, but darn it, I'm going to be tolerant anyway. Well, that was less exciting than I thought it was going to be. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to write my own version of that. It's sort of got a good premise. It starts out on point and kind of strays a little bit and gets a little distracted, and I don't think understands the situation as well as they think or should. So tune in for my version. Why you should tolerate everyone. Otherwise, you're not really that tolerant. I think that makes sense.